Hello, my name is Matt. Welcome to Unbearable 73. It's time, my friends, to conclude Amazon's Rings of Prime of Season 1, Episode 8. This is going to be my comparing their lore or lack thereof to Tolkien's actual Legendarium. All right, let's get started. The format I use is I take a screenshot at a particular point when I notice a problem or something I want to discuss. I'm not always complaining. There are a couple of points in this one in particular where I kind of give them a little credit in some respects, although at least other questions. So, point I'm getting at is I take that screenshot with the subtitles on, so you guys can get a reference on what I'm talking about and what they're talking about, and then I have my commentary, and I'll go slide by slide. Now, in some respects, this is when the cat girl of the three amigos there. It's subtitled in Quenya we come to serve. In some respects, this can be considered more or less problematic. It depends how you interpret who or what these three beings are. If they are Maiar, then they should be speaking Valerian to him. If they're human servants, I suppose Quenya works. The use of Quenya just bothers me because this show has been playing fast and loose with the languages, and languages were an integral and well-constructed part of Tolkien's Legendarium. I'll have more comment on that later. Let's go to the next slide. This is after Galadriel had taken Halbrand, who we know as Sauron, so we'll call him Sauron, to Ost in Edhill, which is the city they keep showing in near Moria. They keep saying Eregion, but that's the whole region. The city is called Ost in Edhill. It's the city that Celebrimbor in the lore rules Eregion from, the elven part of it anyway. This scene is fracking mind-boggling, but it's the first one out of many. She asked Celebrimbor, a renowned smith and master of crafting, to heal Halbrand. You know who's an actual healer? In the actual lore, Elrond is a renowned healer. You know, the guy standing right next to them. The following is from Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. Good, said Gandalf. It's mending fast. You will be sound again. Elrond has cured you. He's tended you for a day, ever since you were brought in. Then later, Elrond's a master of healing. Okay, that's from when Frodo was waking up in Rivendell after Elrond healed him from the Morgul blade, and Elrond was the only one who could do that. And also in the lore, albeit secondary lore, like Unfinished Tales, even Galadriel has healing powers. Celebrimbor does not. Let's keep going. Because I believed in my heart I was not yet worthy. This is when Elrond and Galadriel are talking about why she didn't go stay on the ship to Valinor. In the actual lore, an elf does not need to be worthy to travel to Aman. They just need to get in a boat and sail there. In sheer point of fact, once the Band of Valor was lifted at the end of the First Age, the majority of the elves began departing Aman over the course of the Second Age. Prior even to that, the elves were ordered to come to Valinor long even before all that. They're supposed to go there. Okay. And here's the big break starts. These gemstones, I've never seen anything like them. This scene is total fracking garbage. Sauron had no direct influence over the three elven rings. Only the knowledge of ring lore, crafting and forging, which he, in his guides as Anatar, the Lord of Gifts, had taught to Celebrimbor and the smiths of Begawith and Redain, affected their crafting. I'm going to do a whole separate video about the seen versus the unseen worlds in Tolkien, as well as the darkness and its shadow as part of the ongoing follow-up to the series of videos now that the Ring of Prime is done. But I don't want to spend 10 minutes just talking about the intricacies involved there. But the short point is now that beings like Sauron and Gandalf don't just have a seen effect on the world around them. They have an unseen presence, which is where their magic comes from and that affects the world around them. In Sauron's case, among other things, he exerts a darkness with a capital D that casts a shadow on anything he influences directly. Sauron, being there during this process, basically taints the elven rings. Why is this important? After they had spent about 25 years crafting the Dwarven and the 16 rings that became the 7 Dwarven and Immortal rings, 85 years, mind you, Sauron left to Mordor to craft the one ring. Celebrimbor then decided to craft 3 elven rings. Celebrimbor and 2 of his smiths started using those 3 rings. As Sauron was completing the one, they sensed through the linkage that was there because of the lore they used, not because Sauron tainted them, and were able to remove them just as Sauron completed casting the final spell, binding the One Ring into existence. Had Sauron had any taint over the 3 elven rings, they would not have sensed him and would have been captured possibly captured by the one, depending on who had them. Okay. Now in this crap show, they basically have to do something else as a mechanism. Although it seems like they're making the craft to be part of Sauron's actual plans. In this craft shows Sauron literally touches the gemstones. Frack these morons who wrote this. Fëanor's jewel crafting managed to capture the essence of Valinor. No, fracking no. The Silmarils, as crafted by Fëanor, captured the light of the two trees. Before the trees existed, and after they were killed, Valinor itself remains unchanged. Yes, the light of the two trees does have a positive effect, but nothing like what this crap shows asserting. Valinor is the closest thing to the untainted state of the world, other than Tom Bombadil's lands, before Morgoth poured his unseen power into it in an attempt to shape it to his will. That had the effect of making fell creatures exist, increasing stuff like bad weather and other ill effects in both the seen and unseen worlds. Essentially, Arda Earth fell under the shadow of Morgoth's great darkness, or in Catholic terms, original sin, because Morgoth, as confirmed in Tolkien's letters, is Satan. I hope to do the same for Middle-earth. In the lore, what was happening, as I just mentioned, is that Morgoth and Sauron's shadow is making Middle-earth less hospitable to be lived on both the seen, i.e. a physical level, and non-seen, i.e. a spiritual level. The Elven Rings, unlike the other 16 which enhanced combat or similar ability, had a preservative power. They decreased the state of decline and countered the shadow that Sauron was attempting to cast across the Middle-earth. I call this just indistinct chatter on the subtitle. Galadriel was not anywhere near Ostinedhill when the rings, any of them, not just the three, were forged, nor did she have anything to do with their forging. The reason for this is that Sauron, who had first approached Galadriel and who was in another city at the time, though she was in a region, but another area, also Elrond and Gil-galad and Anatar, in his form as Anatar, and they didn't trust him. So even though they didn't know he was evil, know he was Sauron, but something felt off. So all three of them sent him away. So Anatar / Sauron went to Ostinedhill, where Celebrimbor was, and his guild of craftsmen. Okay, and Galadriel and Celebrimbor would occasionally go in that city and kind of had a co-rule with the Lord. The Lord, there's 3 to 4 different versions of the story here in Tolkien's events, so bear with me. But roughly speaking, Galadriel and Celeborn and Celebrimbor all kind of oversight the whole area from the Elven perspective. Sauron convinced Celebrimbor that Galadriel and Celeborn were bad people, like they were trouble, and he sowed dissent, is the way the book phrases it. So Galadriel and Celeborn actually left Eregion for a while. Celebrimbor took it over and became the Lord of Eregion for the elves. Right? And this is we're talking hundreds of years. Okay, not like 3 weeks as we see here. After the events I described, where Celebrimbor and the other 2 elves sent Sauron completing and about to put on the One Ring, Celebrimbor then went to Galadriel and asked for her advice. This is after that was done. He asked for advice about the 3 rings and what to do with them. She advised they be hidden and protected by powerful elves. Celebrimbor gave Harnenya the Ring of Air. He then sent Narya the Ring of Fire and Vilya the Ring of he gave Galadriel and Nenya the Ring of Water. Excuse me there. He sent Narya the Ring of Fire and Vilya the Ring of Air to Gil-galad. Gil-galad then sent Narya over to Círdan the shipwright at the Grey Havens. Sauron never knew that the 3 most powerful elves remaining in Middle-earth had the 3 Elven Rings. Because he couldn't sense them. They weren't. He had nothing to do with their forging directly. And this is when Marvin the Martian here from the Three Amigos is talking to what they think is Sauron, but is actually fake Gandalf. The one placed upon your mind by those who cast you down. Neither Sauron nor any of the actual Istari of the Third Age were cast down from anywhere. Sauron remained in Middle-earth for the entirety of the Second and Third Ages. The actual Istari sailed to the Middle-earth, arriving at different times at the Grey Havens in the human guises. Círdan recognized that Gandalf was actually Loren the Mire of Manwë and gave him Narya. Even if the Numenor sinks in canon, you can still sail to or from ship across the sea by sailing west-east respectively. However, Manwë or Iluvatar has to allow the trip either way after the sinking. It's a controlled access now. Furthermore, the demonstrated limit, people will bring this up, the demonstrated limits of the Istari were due to specific limitations of them when they inhabited those 5 human bodies. They wanted them they wanted a double limit of powers. Then not only they were forbidden to use their full powers, because they wanted them to, they limited them by some of the frailty of the human body, so that to make it harder for them to do more than advise and help. Let's move on. He is not Sauron. He is the other the Istar. There's more word games from languages to exploit canon. The word Istar in Quenya just means wise one. It refers to no specific being or set of beings. To be extreme, for example, in Robert George's Wheel of Time, the Aiel Wise Ones would be called Aiel Istar in Tolkien terms, or using Quenya. Okay? The term they are trying to fake their way around is Istari, which is short for a member of the Heren Istarion, the Order of the Wise or the Order of the Wizards. In the highest canon, the 5 Istari came in the Third Age. Only Elrond, Círdan, and Galadriel knew that the 5 Istari were actually Maiar bound in limited human form. Due to how Amazon's license works, insofar as we know, they cannot outright call Meteor Man any of the known names of the 5 Istari. I would be remiss not to point out that there are alternative versions of the canon, with 2 of the Istari, the Blue Wizards, Alatar and Palando, came earlier in the Second Age rather than the Third Age. There's also a version where Aloran, who became known as Gandalf, spent some time in spirit form in Middle-earth during the Second Age. Okay? They don't have access to that. I'm just pointing it out. So they're basically using the term Istar and having Meteor Man have Gandalf-like powers. So that basically he's Gandalf in all but name in the show. That's why they're doing this. Now, there's no caption here, but this is basically the butterfly from the Three Amigos, okay? And the Three Amigos are obviously, Eminem, Marvin the Martian, and the Cat Girl, who were those like almost anemic-looking albino-like people, who, as I said, I'll do a full video on Professor Tolkien's concept of the seen and unseen worlds. But in brief, everything that exists in art exists in the seen or the unseen world. The seen world is the physical world. The unseen world is the spiritual world. The powers we see in the Legendarium arise from the seen world or the unseen world. Powers of the seen world are things like science and engineering, or breeding better animals, or building things better, or whatever. Powers of the unseen world are basically higher beings exerting their will in reality, or the actual use of those powers to do magic. However, beings or things of the seen world cannot on their own use or acquire powers of the unseen world. A being of the unseen world must teach or imbue or engender those powers on the being or object of the seen world. Essentially, the Ainur, which means the Valar and the Maiar, and the Elves can do this. They have an unseen presence, therefore they can make objects that link the unseen world and the seen world together, or they can imbue those properties onto men or other, for example. The shadow is, as I said, is a word that refers to the unseen presence of the great darkness of Morgoth or the darkness of Sauron, from the presence that it casts. And this is an actual power that Morgoth and Sauron possess, by the way. It's not just like an aura or a menacing thing. It's power. So what happened in this scene is one of two things, at least in terms of the actual canon. Okay, either those were lesser Maiar in physical form, or those were men granted an unseen presence and therefore power from the shadow cast by Sauron's darkness. Meteor men dissolved their bodies, revealing their presence from the unseen world. The butterflies are, I'm not sure, I don't have the exact term for it, but a fake way to tie Meteor Man to Gandalf. Gandalf is basically one of the chief, if not the chief servants and advisors of Manwë, the king of the Valar and all of Middle-earth. All the birds of the air are servants of Manwë. Gandalf gains friendship and power over the birds in canon to do that, like, for instance, the great eagles or the thrushes, right? Here, I think the butterflies are this crap show's attempt to put another Gandalf association with Meteor Man. Okay? And this one's captioned because Elendil does not merely mean one who loves the stars. In fact, in Quenya, Elendil does mean one who loves the stars. My issue here, because I know what they're trying to say with this scene, but my issue here is the language game this show's been playing all season. Unless you have a bit of a practice here, and not that I know all the languages, but reading Tolkien repeatedly has given me an ear for some of the words and phrases, and in particular, a general knowledge of the important languages and some of the words and phrases and why those languages are used, okay? The only way you have any idea of the language at play, if you're a regular person, is if you're watching with the subtitles on. Otherwise, it's just characters spouting other languages and you not knowing what they're saying. Even then, the combination of not using some of the languages properly and having everyone seem to speak English and then spout random phrases in other languages basically works out to them trying to misuse lore nuggets to convince people that this crap show is authentic. I actually forgot that they mentioned this, but they did in fact say that Elendil's name also meant elf friend, although they would use it derisively with elf lover, which I probably didn't remember it. But what they didn't do was point out that it means elf friend in Adunaic, the language of the men of Numenor, or also known as Westernese. Okay, that language eventually became Westron, which was the common tongue of Middle Earth for everyone. However, that's eventually not now. They have all the Numenorians speaking some sort of common tongue with the mainland humans, right? But in this show, the mainland has not been in contact with Numenor for so long, they're considered a legend. So how can Westron be the common language of Middle Earth? That the way of the faithful. I'm going to do a separate lore video on the whole concept of the Kingsmen versus the faithful on Numenor. On this issue, I want to comment that this is at least somewhat lore accurate. Tarmiriel, like our father Tar-Palantir, wanted to return the entire kingdom to the way of the faithful. This one is not every step we take will be forward. It may take time. Facts. Neither Galadriel nor Elrond had anything to do with the forging of the rings. In canon, depending upon exactly what and when you start counting, it took 100 to 300 years to forge all the rings of power. I have a video plan that will provide the full sequencing of that events. Okay, coming down the line in a few weeks. In this show, they forged the three with Sauron's help in a couple of weeks. It's going faster than I thought, so I probably won't have to split the video. No caption, just Galadriel being mind-fracked. Okay? I am bringing this up this sequence not to criticize the show per se, but to discuss Sauron's actual mind powers. Now, there are sections of fandom who will debate me and have debated me over the years, but canon, Sauron basically has the power to mind-frack people. He does it to Denethor, and Denethor managed to resist and not come under his will, although his mind is broken, in part because Denethor had a lawful right to use the Palantiri, and that protected his mind somewhat. He basically mind-fracks the entire population of Numenor, except for the small group of faithful remaining. In less than about 9 years, he goes from being a prisoner to an advisor to the king, and converts the population of Morgoth worshippers who built a gigantic temple in Morgoth, and they begin engaging in human sacrifice by burning members of the faithful to death. Okay. That's a big change for 9 years. Now that alone is one of an obvious example of Sauron's powers. Slide number 16. At last I felt the light of the One again. Now, again, this show has portrayed the Valar as gods. Now they're bringing a obscure reference to the One. In canon, the One would refer to Eru Yuvatar. Okay? Of course, in Sauron's mind, it could be referring to Morgoth. But who's writing this? Are they going for any consistency? Or are they just throwing stuff out there to see what sticks? Which I think that's what they're trying to do. And this is Galadriel saying, no penance could ever erase the evil you have done. In sheer point of fact, in canon, briefly after the War of Wrath, Sauron was repentant. His fear of manly judgment plus the effects of Morgoth's corruption broke his repentant state, and let the Sauron go in hiding for 500 years, and then plan to return to power. And yes, in canon, everyone can repent and seek forgiveness. It's part of Catholic canon, which Tolkien accounted for as he constructed and developed his Legendarium. This is from Silmarillion of the Rings of Power of the Third Age. When Thangodoran was broken and Morgoth overthrown, Sauron put on his fair hue again and did obeisance to Eonwy, who was the herald of Manwy, and abjured all his evil deeds. And some hold that this was not at first falsely done, but that Sauron in truth repented, if only out of fear, being dismayed by the fall of Morgoth and the great wrath of the Lords of the West. But it is not within the power of Eonwy to pardon those of his own order, and he commanded Sauron to return to Aman and there receive the judgment of Manwy. Then Sauron was ashamed, and he was unwilling to return humiliation and to receive from the Valar a sentence. It might be of long servitude in proof of his good faith, for under Morgoth his power had been great. Therefore, when Eonwy departed, he hid himself in Middle-earth, and he fell back into evil, for the bonds that Morgoth had laid upon him were very strong. Seaside when I was first orphaned. Major freaking law break here. Elrond is not an orphan. His parents are not dead. Irindil the Mariner guards the skies of Arda aboard his flying ship, the Vingalot, which, in Bilbo's account, is made of mithril, by the way. He guards Arda against Melkor's return from the Void and other threats. His mother Elwing is living in a tower on the border of the Sundering Seas. Whenever Irindil returns to Arda, she flies up to meet him. Elrond can literally, prior to the sinking of Numenor and the reshaping of the world, take a ship and go visit his mom. Like, just sail over there. Hey, Mom, how you doing? Seen Dad later. Oh, he's up on the ship. Tell him I said hello. Give him this letter. I know I can't see him, but, whatever. It's highly unlikely that Galadriel ever knew Elrond and Elros as a child. Elrond and Elros were children in the havens of Sirion, of which Irindel was the lord of in the First Age. The surviving sons of Fëanor sought the Silmaril that Dior, the son of Beren and Luthien, bore in Doriath. This event became known as the Second Kinslaying. Dior was killed there. His daughter Elwing took up the Silmaril and fled to the havens of Sirion, again where Irindel ruled. The sons of Fëanor then, Irindel was out at sea. He had decided to go seek the Valar. Irindel was a man, for people who don't know that, and so he went. Not an elf. So he there was a ban on men ever going to Valinor. So he went to sea to try to find his way to Valinor, basically. So the sons of Fëanor, after Elwing fled to the havens of Sirion, the sons of Fëanor, the surviving ones, moved on to the haven and became known as the Third Kinslaying, which was by far the worst. Elrond and Eorls were kidnapped by the two surviving sons of Fëanor, Maedhros and Maglor. To avoid capture or forfeiting Silmaril, Elwing threw herself into the sea, seemingly about to die. But Ulmo, the Lord of the Waters, and arguably the Valar who has done the most to ever help the children of Uvatar, he helped them found the city of Gondolin, for example. He was the one which he helped the faithful survive the sinking of Numenor, and on and on. Caught her and granted her the power of flight. Now, in one version of the Lord, she could turn into a large bird, in others, she can grow large white wings. Okay? Maedhros abandoned the two young boys in a cave filled with water. Maglor had pity on them and saved them, and they came to love one another as family. Maglor raised Elrond and Elros. He taught them many things. Galadriel and Celeborn moved to Eriador sometime before Nargothrond fell in First Age 495. Okay? There's zero way that she could have met Elrond when he first became orphaned, because he was never orphaned and she never knew him as a kid. We must make 3. Fucking no. Just no. More of this nonsense. Not only did Galadriel have nothing to do with the forging of any of the rings, she was not even there. Celebrimbor made 3 rings, seemingly to reflect that there were 3 Silmarils, and the nature of the 3, meaning the rings, that of air, fire, and water, reflect the final resting places of the Silmarils. Sorry if that sounded ranty, guys, but it was tough to get through this one. But, well, season 1 of Crafts was finally over. There's no saving this from a lore perspective, unless we get a reboot in the opening season 2, where some of the actress plays Galadriel, one who's not over a foot shorter than Galadriel's supposed to be, wakes up after a horrible nightmare sometime in the early second age and goes, what the hell did I just dream, The lore violations have been egregious and offensive, not only to the material, but to Professor Tolkien himself. The only satisfying thing to take from the show is that the response, not only made by the fandom to this atrocity of an adaptation, or rather, an atrocity as an adaptation, has been overwhelmingly against it. So until season 2 with its accompanying lore massacres come along, we can rest our weary minds. I'm going to be doing a series of lore videos starting in 1 to 2 weeks with very specific topics and references so that some of these things can be understood better. I'm not going to be doing like term paper length videos. I want to try to narrowly focus the target just on some small little bits that sometimes get glossed over in some of the larger things. The people insert these little blips into their larger videos, which are great. I love a lot of them, but they don't. I want to focus on some very specific things, some family trees, some concepts, and whatever. Thanks for watching my video. Smash the like button if you liked it. Hit the dislike if you didn't. Comment down below if you have any questions for me about this video. Please share it if you found it worthwhile. I'm Matt. This has been another episode of Unbearable 73. Have a nice day, and I am out of here.